Hello, everybody. Uh, Today is November 26th, and this is the Constitution Day in India. It was on this day in 1949 that the Constituent Assembly adopted the Constitution of India. At that time, the Constitution had 375 articles and 8 schedules. Over a period of time, there have been many amendments, and we now have 395 articles and 12 schedules in our constitution. In fact, even Dr. Ambedkar, who was the chairman of the drafting committee, had observed that people feel that, and it is true that this is the longest constitution in the world, but it's also true that India is the most diverse nation in the world. So the Constitution of India is a document that takes care of the diversity and the social and political reality of the country. The other thing is that when you read the Constitution of India, you will realize that a very important aspect of it is that it addresses the concerns of virtually every segment of the country's diverse population. And more important, it has kept the world's most diverse nation together. That is the importance of the Constitution of India. In fact, Dr. Ambedkar, as I said, who was chairman of the drafting committee, had said that I feel the Constitution is workable, flexible, and it is strong enough to hold the country together both in peacetime and wartime. This will need a bit of explanation, which I will come to as we go along. But first, a point about India's diversity. We have people, adherents of all the main religions in the world are in India, and the people of India speak 121 languages and 270 dialects. That's the kind of linguistic diversity we have in India, and they belong to different ethnic groups. In fact, this social diversity that you see in India has over a period of time got translated in the political space as well, because in the 1950s there used to be about a dozen political parties in the lower house of Parliament of India, but today you have over 40 political parties represented in that house. So the people belong to different races and ethnic groups. India is described as a melting pot of races, an ethnological museum. That is truly amazing in terms of our diversity. Another point about the size of the Indian Constitution. As I said, it is regarded as the most lengthiest constitution. The American Constitution has just 7 articles. The French Constitution has 92 articles, and the Indian Constitution today has 395 articles. The other aspect of our Constitution is the social philosophy that is behind it. In fact, Dr. Ambedkar and others paid a lot of attention to the social aspects of the population, and Dr. Ambedkar significantly said we should not be content with mere political democracy. We must make our political democracy a social democracy. By this he meant that mere adult suffrage or citizens having the right to vote, and that itself will not ensure equality. We have to see equality in the social and economic space as well. And therefore, he laid down this principle that liberty, equality, and fraternity are not to be treated as separate items in a trinity. They form a union of trinity in the sense that to divorce one from the other is to defeat the very purpose of democracy. He said that mere liberty will not do, or mere equality or sense of equality will not do. There has to be fraternity. And without fraternity, liberty, equality would not become a natural course of things. So this is broadly the philosophical approach of the founding fathers and our constitution makers, which has influenced the writing of the Indian Constitution. And those who have worked that constitution and those who have examined it will certainly agree that this constitutional structure best suits India's social and political reality. And therefore, our founding fathers have told us that equalization of opportunity is a must for democracy to succeed. That's why we have the concept of reservations in our state legislatures and in parliament. We have reservations in the field of education, in the field of government employment, and then we have strong laws to end discrimination and exploitation. Another important feature of the Indian Constitution is the chapter on fundamental rights. And I'll just read out a few of these rights, which I think is very, very foundational for a democracy. One is Article 14, which says the state shall not deny any person equality before the law or the equal protection of the laws within the territory of India. I regard this as a very important article in a democracy because unless we ensure equality before the law, there can never be democracy. Another article is Article 21, which says no person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty except according to procedure established by law. This again is a very foundational idea in a democracy. There are other articles which are also of the nature of strengthening our democracy and ensuring equality. Example, Article 15, which prohibits discrimination on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth, and Article 16, which says equality of opportunity for all citizens in the matter of employment to any office under the state. Then we come to Article 19, which is at the heart of our fundamental rights. It gives us freedom of speech and expression, and freedom to assemble peaceably, and freedom to reside and settle in any part of India, freedom to form associations and unions, and to practice any profession or any occupation, trade, or business. And I think these are all very important fundamental rights. Now, apart from this, we have very important rights for linguistic and religious minorities, which are enshrined, in Articles 26 and 25 and 26, and Article 29 and 30, where, for example, Article 29 says protection of the rights of linguistic religious minorities to preserve their script, language, and culture. Article 30 says right of minorities to establish and administer their educational institutions. These are all very important rights. And then the whole secular idea. Secularism is again a foundational idea in a democracy. So we have Article 28, which prohibits religious instruction in state-aided institutions. This is meant to strengthen the secular fabric of the country. And as I had told you, Articles 25, 26, Article 26 talks of freedom to manage religious affairs and to administer, maintain institutions of religious and charitable purposes. Article 25 is for an individual, but Article 26 is for a religious denomination. So these are all very important rights which are given to linguistic and religious minorities. Now, while we talk of fundamental rights, I would also like to turn to what are called directive principles of state policy, which is in part 4 of the Constitution. This is a very unique feature in the Indian Constitution because these provisions are, though they are not enforceable in court of law, but the principles laid down are nevertheless fundamental in the governance of the country, and it shall be duty of the state to apply these principles while making these laws. This is what the Constitution says. The sensitivity of our Constitution makers to the Indian social, political, and economic reality at the time of independence is evident when one reads the directive principles. For example, it directs the state to secure a social order for the promotion of the welfare of the people. And it says justice, social, economic, political, shall inform all institutions of national life. And it says people must have adequate means to livelihood. And more importantly, the ownership and control of the material resources of the community. The state must ensure that they are so distributed as to subserve the common good. Also, the state must ensure The operation of the economic system does not result in concentration of wealth and means of production to the common detriment. These are all very basic and critical areas in regard to governance and policy making for the state. And the Indian state has, over the last 75 years, endeavored to live up to these great principles which are laid down in the Constitution. For example, Article 39A gives equal justice and free legal aid to the poor, and it says, Article 41 says, right to work, to education and public assistance in certain cases. So you have old age pensions and sickness and disablement, allowances given to the people. Article 42 talks of promotion of just and humane conditions of work and maternity relief. In fact, the Narendra Modi government had some time ago increased the maternity leave to 26 weeks recently, and I would say that that is part of the principle and the philosophy that is there in our constitution. And Article 43A talks of participation of workers in management of industries. So when you look at the various social welfare measures adopted by the federal government and by the states across the country, you will realize the immense value that we attach to the Constitution of India.
Yes.
The other very important feature is federalism. The Indian Constitution can be both unitary as well as federal, according to the requirements of time and circumstances. In normal times, it is framed to work as a federal system, but in times of war, it is so designed as to make it work as though it was a unitary system. This is what Dr. Ambedkar had said at the time of framing of the Constitution, and Article 1 of the Constitution describes India as a union of states and not as a federation. India is not a federation in the sense in which federations are known. The Constitution has both federal and unitary features. States constituting a true federation have the right to secede, but the Indian Union is indestructible. The states cannot break away from the Union, but the Union can alter the boundaries of the state. So, this is one of the important aspects of the Indian Constitution, that it provides a certain flexibility and a certain scope for maneuver in times of emergencies. The draft Constitution has sought to forge means and methods whereby India will have a federation and at the same time will have uniformity in all basic matters which are essential to maintain the unity of the country. The means adopted by the draft constitution are a single judiciary, uniformity in fundamental laws, civil and criminal, and an important common all India civil service to man important posts. So this is some of the main features of the Indian Constitution and Indian federalism. And one can therefore safely say that the Indian Federation will not suffer from the faults of rigidity or legalism. This distinguishing feature is that its distinguishing feature is that it is a flexible federation. This is the views of Dr. Ambedkar and some of our other constitution makers. And this view has more or less been upheld by political scientists like Professor K.C. Ware, who on the Indian Constitution, he says, it establishes a system of government which is quasi-federal. Ivor Jennings says Indian Constitution is a federation with a strong centralizing tendency. I will just make one more point in regard to the size of the Constitution and amendments. We have amended the Constitution over 100 times since it came into being in 1950. And in fact, many people wonder as to why we have had to amend it so many times. My view is that these amendments have helped strengthen the unity and integrity of India and have helped improve the development process in the country, and therefore there is no harm in amendments. Also, as Mahatma Gandhi has said, man-made laws are open to emendations. Therefore, they are far better than other texts. He therefore preferred man-made texts because depending on the exigencies of the circumstances and depending on the needs of society as we go along, you could amend the constitution, and Mahatma Gandhi liked that idea. Similarly, Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States and a great statesman who played a key role in the drafting of the American constitutions, has said, "We may consider each generation as a distinct nation with a right by the will of the majority to bind themselves, but none to bind the succeeding generation." By this, he meant that with changing times, societies may need various changes in their constitutions and so on, and they should have the right to do so. That is why I will say that when you say we have amended our constitution over 100 times, we have taken both Gandhi and Jefferson very seriously. Now, to sum up, I will say that a full-fledged democracy must have the following 8 elements. 1, an inviolable commitment to freedom of expression, freedom of conscience, and other fundamental rights. 2, an unambiguous constitutional commitment to secularism. 3, separation of religion and state. 4, a republican form of government. 5, constitutional right to equality before law and equal protection of the laws. 6, a right to life and personal liberty. 7, gender equality. And number 8, universal adult suffrage. I am happy to report that all these 8 elements exist in the Indian Constitution and the democratic system. And therefore, we need to be very proud of our Constitution. The other thing that has happened over a period of time is occupational democratization of the House of the People, which has resulted in strengthening public commitment to the Constitution and to India's unity and integrity. Secondly, democracy in India is the greatest human politico-social experiment in the world. That is how I view it, and you will never find such diversity, economic underdevelopment, democracy, and commitment to national unity anywhere in the world. So I will say that on the Constitution Day, Indians should really be proud of the Constitution, the political empowerment of many disadvantaged groups, the occupational democratization of Parliament and our state legislatures, the strengthening of the federal structure, accountability of the executive to the legislature, transparency in government through measures like right to information, equalizing opportunity for justice through the public interest litigation route, a strong and independent media. I will say that this is no mean achievement for a nation with 1.3 billion people and with such a large number of people who are still poor and non-literate. To sum up, I will say, and I will recall the words of the great saint Swami Vivekananda, who is a great icon who has influenced Indian thought for many decades. He said, to succeed, you must have tremendous perseverance and tremendous will. I will drink the ocean, says the persevering soul. At my will, mountains will crumble. Have that sort of energy, that sort of will, work hard, and you will reach your goal. When I look at the journey of India since independence over the last 75 years, and after we adopted our constitution in 1950, I will say that Swami Vivekananda has influenced us in a very big way, because as a nation, we have persevered and we have worked with tremendous will to move from where we were in 1947 to where we are now, socially, politically, economically, and otherwise in the year 2021. I thank you very much for having so patiently listened to me. Very best wishes to you on India's Constitution Day. Jai Hind.